You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone on X and on Rumble. So glad that you are here. With me is Shamanisis. Shaman, welcome, as always.
Hello, Billy. Good to be here.
Yes, I got a lot to talk about. If you're new to what we do here on X, I'm going to begin the, excuse me, I'll clear my throat first. I'm going to begin the podcast here in just a moment. And the podcast that we record over here is the one that you hear on all the major platforms. The BillyDees podcast is on all the major platforms. And that's the one you'll hear available within the next probably 12 hours. It's usually up within that time frame on demand. And we record that while we let the audience from X in. So that's kind of our modus of operandi here. And with that being said, I think we always wait just a moment for people to come in and engage the live stream. And I think we're ready to go. So with that being said, here we go. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, it's a little of both. I got my co-host with me. We're going to be talking live commentary. Shamanisis. Shaman, how are you? Welcome.
Hello, Billy. I'm so delighted to be here. There's so much going on right now. The news is rather juicy to be covering tonight.
Absolutely. It sure is. There's a lot going on. So we'll get right into it. Let me put this little disclaimer out there because I have recently, the listenership of the program, we have a lot of RFK supporters. Okay. So I want to be very clear. I still love RFK. And quite frankly, this choice that we have between Biden and Trump, I mean, it's a regurgitation of what we had in 2020.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best scenario then.
Yeah.
And I have people swear up and down that, Biden is better than Trump. Anything's better than Trump. But I'll tell you what, if you honestly believe, let me put this into an analogy for you. Okay. If you believe that Joe Biden is better than Trump, the best thing I can tell you is that's like taking a shit in your pants and going home and changing your shirt.
Oh.
So that's what this election is. We're all sitting with shitty pants, and we're going to change our shirt in November. That is the election this year.
It really is. It's like picking between two shit-stained pants. It's so bad.
It's terrible. I'm going to burn in hell for saying those things. And I pray for God's forgiveness. But in the meantime, though, it's the truth. It's a terrible choice.
They're both awful choices.
So with that being said, I am all for RFK. I want to be very clear. I love RFK. RFK is my man. But I got to tell you, this stuff here, there's quite the whirlwind going on with what his potential VP picks could be. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Nancy Pelosi and TikTok. Tic-tac-toe.
Oh my God. Oh, so cringe. Why are politicians so cringe-inducing? They really are. They have the worst sense of humor. What they think is cool it's like watching your parents.
Yes. All right. Getting back to RFK, let me preface this a little bit. My opinion, and I'll let you give yours. Vice presidential picks are kind of peculiar because they're very important, because what people say is this person is one heartbeat away from the presidency. So you can't have Vlad the Impaler as your vice president. Okay. But by the same token, Being number two means your opinion doesn't really mean that much in the big scheme of things, because people are always going to say, well, that's not really the person that's going to have the final say. So the strategy in picking a vice president should be do no harm. You're not going to hit it out of the park. I don't care how rogue you think RFK is and all these other things. And well, he's got to do things different because he's a maverick and all this. The fact of the matter is, I could probably, and most people could, name all the presidents since World War II up to now. Not too many people could do that with the vice presidents. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So you're not going to hit a home run with the vice president. So with that being said, pick somebody who's safe. Okay, this is a low risk choice, low risk, low reward choice. You don't want to make it low risk, low value, high risk. And that's what you do when you swing for the fences with your vice presidential pick, because you're only going to get so much good out of it. And by the same token, the harm that it could do is great. But probably one of the best examples of that is Sarah Palin.
I was just thinking about her.
Did McCain a lot of harm?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, it looked great up front, but they didn't have the depth to pull it off.
Didn't have she did the convention very well. I thought they might pull this off.
Yeah.
But the more they tried that, then she kind of disappeared. And what was happening behind the scenes was like they're giving her a crash course on how government works, how the world works.
Well, they shouldn't have trotted her out to talk so much. That was the biggest problem. The mistake they made.
Yeah. So you don't. And Dan Quayle, maybe fairly or unfairly, he was picked on a lot by the press.
He really was. He was treated pretty abominably.
But he had some dummy things that he said too. So I mean, the whole thing, you don't want that. Okay. So here again, you want a choice that is low risk and unfortunately low reward, because there's only so much you can do with that. You don't want to pick a high risk choice when you're not going to get that much in the best scenario, and the risk could really bite you in the ass. So with that being said, that's my kind of philosophy. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. No, I'm there.
Okay, she's there. She doesn't have that much.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of Kamala Harris because I
that's another one.
That's another one that it was like you also need people to think, well, okay, I could see that working. And that's always been the problem with her, is that no one can actually see that working.
No.
So it's like be safe, but be smart, be strategic, but also make sure that they look at least presidential on some level.
Yeah. And that's where the Democrats, if they had a rock star at vice president right now, okay, it might have not have mattered in 2020, but now if it looked like President Biden may not make it for whatever reason, just doesn't have the health or the energy or whatever, just simply can't do it, then you would have a viable candidate at number two.
Yeah.
So it does matter.
They lost their viable candidate. I think if they could have gone back a year, they might not have gone with Biden. Biden may have said, I think he was pushed into it, to be honest. I don't think Biden was like, I really want to run for president again.
Yeah.
Because he looks exhausted.
Yeah. I've said it before. He was the one and gone, one and done. That's what they wanted. They wanted one and done. They just wanted a name to choose other than Trump. Yeah. And get, have him do his one and done, and then get a rock star in there. And unfortunately, he's still there. Getting back to RFK, for those who may not know, RFK is Bobby Kennedy's son. He is running for president as an independent. And he hasn't gotten a whole lot of press from the mainstream media, as we call it, legacy media, and people say, well, what's the mainstream media? Well, the mainstream media is what you've been watching with your parents and your grandparents forever. Stuff that's on the 6 o'clock news, the cable news programs, and all this other stuff.
The stuff that boomers watch.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly why RFK is having a hard time reaching the boomers. His numbers aren't that strong with boomers, and that's why. So this is one of those deals where maybe, Shaman, I know you always there's a master plan. There's a master plan in some of this craziness, because some of these names that were floated this past week to me are really surprising.
This is to be the vice president.
To be the vice
candidate
president with RFK.
RFK.
And a lot of his
I can't wait.
a lot of the RFK supporters are really like her. Yeah, this might work. I didn't like it at first, but it might work. I don't know what.
Oh no.
Okay, here we go.
Already cringing.
One of the names is Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Aaron Rodgers. And there's a lot of people that support RFK that are on board with this. And I'm going to tell you what.
Oh God. Are they men?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They say that, he's going to reach a younger crowd. And no, he's not. Aaron Rodgers is not the footballer that's going to pick up a younger crowd. He's not Mahomes. Okay. Yeah. He's not. All right. So with that being said, Aaron Rodgers is one of them. Jesse Ventura is another one.
Where's he been all these years? I didn't even know he was still around.
Yeah, he's still around. Of course, he does have some experience as a governor. He does have some experience. Okay. Then there's Tulsi Gabbard, which I would totally be on board with. I would totally be on board with Tulsi. Rand Paul is another one, but apparently he's already out. And I believe Tulsi Gabbard's a long shot too. Andrew Yang is one I would be okay with. Mike Rowe.
Yeah, Andrew Yang's a good option.
Andrew Yang is another one. You like him?
I do, and I think because we're moving towards a needing to have a universal income because of AI's disruption of the job force, the job market, and I think he's a big proponent of that. But
interesting. Okay,
then a sane option.
Yes. Then there's Mike Rowe, who isn't horrible, but here again, no governmental experience that I'm aware of.
Mike Rowe,
the guy that did the dirty jobs and all that.
That's what I thought. He's actually very involved in politics. Yeah.
Okay. Is he okay? Yeah, I know he's very much an advocate for, and I'm very much with him on this on skilled labor, because I don't care how great AI is. If you want a house, somebody's going to have to go out there and pound some goddamn nails. There's no other way.
I hate to tell you, Billy.
Go ahead, tell me.
It's already finishing the insides of rooms. Literally putting up we're very close to a lot of jobs that are repetitive, physical labor jobs as well being replaced by robots. So
automation is something that's been around in the car industry and everything else. But there comes a point. Mm-hmm. There comes a point when somebody's got to be out there knee deep in mud. You got to be setting up the automation. You have to be doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Trucks have to haul stuff out there. There's only so much that can be done with technology. And the Dirty Jobs program, go take your pick. The guys that are crawling around in the sewers. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we've never really respected that. And I'll tell you, that's where Europe has been way ahead of us. They don't have any problem getting things built or getting things done. There's people there that know how to build shit. Okay. In America, there isn't. We got social media influencers here. We got a monopoly.
We've got really, really poorly built buildings. Most of the buildings, particularly the houses now. I gasp when I go through really expensive neighborhoods now, because I know a well-built house and most of them are garbage. The $1 million range, they're like $200,000 houses from 30 years ago.
Yeah. Tony Robbins is another one. Yes, Tony Robbins.
Oh, no.
Trisha Lindsay is another one, and then Scott Brown. And I believe most of these that I've mentioned are kind of off the radar already. Mm-hmm. So I'm not exactly sure which ones are viable. I'm hoping this is a smokescreen, because like you say, not a whole lot of chatter on the mainstream media about RFK until this week, until these names came out and everybody's talking about it.
It's a PR. It could be a PR move just to keep the interest up while he's gotten a lot of momentum recently.
Yeah.
Of all the names you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers that sounds like a PR stunt. I mean, I don't dislike, because I don't hate people. It's just not in my energy. But I don't think they know the younger generations or just how tired most people are of celebrity culture, or they wouldn't be throwing that name around.
Yeah,
I think that actually does more harm than good. If he had experience in real politics, perhaps it would make sense. But Tulsi and Andrew are the only two names that really made sense that you mentioned.
Yeah, and getting back to Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to talk about him. I've been living in a football culture my entire life, and not willingly, because I am not a sports fanatic. Okay, but I'm from Canton, Ohio. The high schools around here have produced some of the best football players you can imagine, Paul Brown being one of them. And, just a couple miles up in the north of me is the Cleveland Browns. Right 5 minutes outside my door is the Professional Football Hall of Fame. I actually drove for the Hall of Fame one year. I had a lot of fun doing that with all those celebrities and everything that were here. Drive to the south, an hour and a half. Well, I'm going to say to the university. Ohio State's about 2 hours from me. So needless to say, these are all names and things about football that have been the longest part of the history of the sport has been where I'm from. Okay. And when we here's what I can tell you. I've heard a lot every year when the enshrinees come in, the people that are inducted to the Hall of Fame. I hear the word legend a lot. I hear the word hero a lot. And there's only a few names that really stand out in those terms. And I'm going to name some for you. Gale Sayers would be one. Walter Payton would be another one. Mm-hmm. Roger Staubach would be another one. Vince Lombardi would be one. Yeah. And I'll tell you what's special about these names. These names are special because these guys weren't just good football players. They were great men. They were great men. And everything that they applied in their lives. You could take some of the things Vince Lombardi said about football and apply it to any aspect of your life, whether it's the relationship that you want in your marriage or whether it's your job or your passion, your art. These people transcended the sport and were inspirations for how people live their lives. And I'm telling you right now, respectfully, Aaron Rodgers is not that. Okay. Yeah. He's just not. Now, that's not to say he's a bad person. That's not to say that, I wouldn't want to go out and have a beer with him, although I understand he can be kind of persnickety in terms of what you say to him. You don't mention his height and all that, I'm told. You can't say, oh, you're not as tall as I thought you were. They get pissed off. Okay. Oh, my God. So anyway, I've heard that from a lot of people. I don't know how true it is, but anyway, his conduct in front of the in front of the press and everything tells me everything I need to know. I'm gonna touch on that because here's why. I'm gonna give you. Let's take an example. If you think I'm picking on Aaron Rodgers, let's take a little example here. Recently, this was back in January. He was on a podcast, and the Epstein supposed list that we heard so much about, the Epstein list was coming out, and that turned out to be a dud for the most part. But the Epstein list was supposed to be coming out, right? And he made this little quip that Jimmy Kimmel better watch out. And of course, that's a pretty, I don't know what kind of an insinuation that is, but he had to walk it back a day later. Mm-hmm. There was so much and Jimmy Kimmel said, hey, we're not going to stand for this. He got so much backlash that he tried to walk it back. And I'm going to play you the clip. The first part of this clip is going to be his actual comment, which is, better look out, Jimmy Kimmel, the list is coming out. And then he walks it back and he says, well, if you listen to that, I didn't say he would be on the list. He gets that little smirk and mumbles out the side of his mouth. I didn't say he'd be on the list. I just said to watch out. Okay, that's the kind of bullshit that I'm talking about. Okay, as far as I am concerned, if you got something to say about somebody, say it and back it up or shut the fuck up. That's my take on this. Here's the clips. Here's what he said and here's how he walked it back. And I'm just going to play like 30 seconds of it. If you want to research this and hear every little detail and every little context, you go right ahead. But this is going to show you what I'm talking about here.
A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't. All right. I said that a lot of people, and I'm quoting myself here, a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't come out. End quote. I totally understand how serious an allegation of pedophilia would be. So for him to be upset about that, I get it. Did you watch the quote?
Yeah. Did you watch the quote? That's not what I said. All right. Then, like I said, what were you saying? Well, what was
this is all about fame. I'm sorry. That whole thing, I spent a lot of time working with celebrities, and that his whole thing is about fame. And this may, just so you know, just from an analytical standpoint, this could be just a rolling the dice because Aaron may be a supporter RFKs, and they're like, "Hey, do you mind if we throw your name out there to get attention from that younger audience?" I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
We don't know for a fact if it's like Aaron's like, "Oh," or, Aaron Rodgers is like, "Hey, I want to be your VP." I just don't see
Yeah.
it.
And here again, I'm not convinced that a young audience in the tradition of what I think about a young audience is that intrigued with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but again, it's about attention.
Patrick
All RFK
Mahomes,
does to
Patrick
say is like,
Mahomes,
"Oh, he seems like a
yes.
great guy," but he's not in the running.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes, yes. The quarterback in Buffalo, absolutely, yes, 100%. Aaron Rodgers, no, I just don't see 20-somethings and teenagers getting all riled up. And he's a great quarterback, and he might be a great guy. And it turned out he was right about the vaccines and all that as well. Or at least he had some good points. But here again, he was coy in the way he handled that. He didn't make any friends with the way he handled that. He was very coy about it. So enough about him. The other thing, Jesse Ventura is he wouldn't be somebody that I'd be being too enthralled about, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'm not, and I know everybody loves Tony Robbins.
I'm sorry, I don't get it.
And then here's why, because I know this kind of touches on your territory, and I don't want you. I'm not talking. What I'm about to say does not apply to the spiritual people and all the other people who are genuinely trying to improve people's lives. That's not what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What I am talking about, to me, Tony Robbins is the same thing to positivity that Joel Osteen is to faith. They bottle and they sell it.
It's about making money, and it always has been with all those empires. Those are about making money, and I don't dislike Tony Robbins. I think he has a great message, but it is about selling stuff. That's what that whole thing is,
and that's fine. And that's where you get into. Well, so I always get these straw man arguments. So, Billy, are you against positivity? I'm against it when it's bottled and sold to the most vulnerable people out there. That's with this tithing and churches and all this other kind of stuff. Hope and faith is sold, and so is positivity. Yeah. And I could easily analyze their techniques, Joel Osteen and Tony Robbins, they would be exactly the same. Shaman, let me tell you something about yourself, Shaman. You are not a copy. You are an original. You are a masterpiece. And you should think about yourself like that every minute of every day. When you get up in the morning, you should look in that mirror and say, Shaman, I'm a masterpiece. I am an original. I am not a copy. There's not another person alive like me.
Yeah.
That's the bullshit. That's the bullshit that both of them say. And
no, it's true. You're actually touching on something, Billy, that I talk about a lot, because the monetization of spirituality or self-love or self-help, whatever the hell you want to label it, is actually one of the number one things that turns people off who are actually stepping towards things, because they just get this icky salesy thing going on. And so a lot of people are professional self-help people who literally go from one guru to the next. And so I'm not a fan. Most of my content is actually free because I'm really trying to get people to hear the message. But one of the things that's turned me off about a lot of the people in my industry is because when you start to get into it, starts feeling like not a Ponzi scheme. What's they were really big in the 80s.
You're talking about the pyramids?
Pyramids. Yeah, it starts to feel like a pyramid scheme. It's like, there's this other girl, Amy something, that she does the same thing. And I just feel like, and like, I get it, dude, you're building an empire. You're building a kingdom, a financial kingdom built on positivity, but it just feels icky after a while. Yeah. Like
I want to be very clear here too, that I am not anti-faith. I met one of the most impressive people I ever met a number of years ago was a priest from Africa, a real tall, and I'll say beautiful black man, because this guy was just a beautiful human being. This guy worked in Africa helping children who were being bitten by mosquitoes, and a lot of them had AIDS. And he was out there with very little resources. There's no big hospitals, no big pharma companies out there helping him. He was out there intense in the stifling heat, helping these children based upon his faith and his love for humanity. Now, I'm sorry, but Joel Osteen is not that. He's not. And I could say the same about the positivity brokers. There's a lot of people, and I know them in our community here again, who are out there on the ground level, trying to help people who are homeless, trying to give them hope. Those people are not what Tony Robbins is. I'm not necessarily saying that Joel Osteen or Tony Robbins are bad people, but I am saying you have to recognize that it is a product that is being bottled and sold. Mm-hmm. The next step is a seminar. The next step is a book. The next step is something.
Yeah.
And empires are what these people live in.
Yeah. There's a whole formula to it, and they're all following it. There's a whole list of them.
Yeah.
And they're mostly men, because men tend to get support in the spiritual positivity space easier than women. It's really. It's interesting. I'm not saying they don't exist, but you don't see Mel Robbins in the same category because it's harder to get support when you're a female in the same industry. But
interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a no for me. The only ones you mentioned that were like to me were Jesse Ventura. Seems like isn't he like the same age as Trump?
That's another thing too. If you're getting the young vote, you got to keep in mind that I ain't got time to bleed. Jesse Ventura was a long time ago. Okay, remember that line? I ain't got time.
Yeah, it was like 30 years ago.
More longer than that. It's hard to believe it's that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I'm teasing.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with my age at all. Yeah. He needs to keep it.
I'm sorry. I totally missed that. Okay. I apologize.
It's okay.
I'm kind of dense today.
It's funny. No, it's
right.
cool.
Well, anyway, I don't know. It actually, Aaron Rodgers belongs on the ticket with Trump.
Oh my God.
That would be a good one.
That would actually be funny. Yeah.
That's where Aaron Rodgers belongs. He belongs.
I would not put it past Aaron Rodgers' people to be throwing his name out there as a potential vice presidential candidate as a PR move, because I see a lot of PR moves from that camp, it seems.
Yeah.
Over the last 5 or 10 years. I don't really know enough about him to quote more than that. But when I'm aware of someone's PR gambles, if you will, then I know that they have a team that's out there keeping their name out there. So when they put it past me, with people weren't like, hey, RFK's considering Aaron.
Yeah, that's funny. All right. Before we move on, let me just tell you, there's a reason why you don't burn your feet when you walk over 2,000 coals, and has nothing to do with feeling good about the fact that you won't. I'll just leave that there. Okay. TikTok, the TikTok ban. It's amazing to me. If there were Americans lying in the street bleeding,
there are.
Congress couldn't decide what to do about it. How do we get these people aid? How do you get the money to them? I don't understand. If we give it away, it all gets usurped in fraud. But what do we do? But for some reason, they have no problem at all fast tracking this bill. That first of all, it came out of a committee last week by unanimous decision. When was the last time bipartisan unanimous decisions?
It was 2
came out of
days
Congress.
and a unanimous vote. It stinks to high heaven.
Yes, it does. It stinks to high heaven. That's a great way to put it.
It took them 5 weeks to decide I think it was about 5 weeks to decide to send Americans money when they closed the fucking country. Excuse my French. Mm-hmm. 5 weeks. We can't do anything about the homeless. We can't do anything to help vets who are suicidal. We can't do anything to alleviate all sorts of huge issues here in America, but we can find a way to get everybody on board to approve a potential ban of TikTok in 2 days. A company that's, by the way, not majority, it's not even owned by the Chinese government. It's not even majority owned by the Chinese government. 20% of their ownership is actually their employees, of which 7,000 are American.
Yep. 60%
of the ownership are companies like BlackRock that own shit tons of stock and a ton of other. They control. So I say own. They control a ton of stock in almost all the major companies in America, especially the ones on the S&P 500. So the whole thing is just absurd. This is about controlling Americans, and they don't like the fact that younger people are getting their news from an app that they don't have a back door to or control of. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I would agree that TikTok and a lot of these apps are not the best place to get news. But I wouldn't say that it's no good at all. I would just, a lot of these, there have been times when I have gotten insight or I've gotten an angle on something from somebody on TikTok that I went ahead and investigated, and I found out that it was correct. So, I mean, you have to take some personal responsibility in how you process this information, for sure. But to say that it's worthless and it's just a bunch of people dancing and we got to ban it because the app itself is mining your data. Every single thing about what goes on between a phone and an app is mining your data. It's just a matter of how bad it is. All the tech companies have been guilty of this. To one degree or another. We had the issues with Facebook. We had the issues with and as far as the government meddling, look at the Twitter files.
Oh, I know. Billy, it actually bites my ass that these politicians really care about this. Because, see, most of these politicians that are involved in all of this, they've been around for a really long time because we can't get rid of them. And so most of these people were around when we gave away our manufacturing, when we got rid of our skill sets, when we handed the manufacturing of our clothing, our appliances, all of those things, our phones, to China.
Yeah.
They did nothing about any of that, especially when people in America were like, we're giving away all of our jobs, but it's for the best for the country. So where the fuck were you when we were handing over our everything? Where were you when we were giving, when I was calling out Facebook for taking people's data and all of that? I mean, it was crazy. Not one word for 10 years that was known, and they did nothing about it.
Yes.
I'm sorry that this one gets me fired up. It's not about TikTok. It's about the bullshit. They were around 20 years ago when Facebook came around, and I was shadow banned on both Facebook and Twitter for calling out the fact that people seemed oblivious to what was going on with their phones, and they did nothing about that until everyone's data of our generation, anything that really mattered, is long gone. And for most of these kids who've been on iPads and iPhones for since they were babies, this data is gone. So it's absolutely got nothing to do with taking people's data for a company that isn't even owned by the Chinese government in the first place. It gets ridiculous. And it makes me highly suspect of all of them, like we weren't already. Which is what's going to end up. This is where this is leading. They're losing what little in their gamble to get control of us. They're losing the last thread that they had to most American people that are media savvy.
Yeah. And I have a lot wrong with this. Well, you're correct. Technically, ByteDance owns it. And here again, it's broken up. The ownership is split apart, any number of different parties. The argument is that they could be coerced or they could be convinced, if that's a better word, to mine data on behalf of the Chinese government. So in fairness, that's the argument. But like I said, that's possible now across the board with, if I would strongly advise listening to some of the Snowden stuff about what your phone can do. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. But that's a whole nother topic. I'm afraid that once they move on TikTok, it's going to be something else next. And then it's going to be something else next. Mm-hmm. I don't know how true this is, but I understand there's some protections in this bill that might that seem to imply that the metaverse and Meta and Facebook are big lobby people. So you got to keep all this in check.
Facebook are the ones that financed when this got started a year ago, when they first went after TikTok. If you actually look into it, you will discover that Facebook financed, I think it was $100-something million, PR campaign in Washington through the big fancy lobbying and PR firms. They're the ones that got this whole ban started in the first place a year ago. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that they weren't financing this as well, because it's their biggest threat. And once TikTok started selling things, it started eating into several other major American companies' profit margins. So,
yep. So, interestingly, if you want to have your mind put to rest about if you have any worries about TikTok, no worries, because Nancy Pelosi is she's going to straighten you out on this whole TikTok mess. Here,
Mr. Chair, I have a few points to make, and it's interesting to hear this respectful debate. First of all, this is not a ban on TikTok. I'm a grandmother of teenagers. I understand the entertainment value, the educational value, the communication value, the business value for some business on this. This is not an attempt to ban TikTok. It's an attempt to make TikTok better. Tic-tac-toe, a winner. A winner.
It's a winner. It's a Charlie Sheen. We're winning.
There's nothing more cringe-inducing than somebody who's disconnected from current trends trying to be cool. It just kills any value of what you just said. And she's, whatever. Like I don't believe a damn thing that Nancy Pelosi says. I just don't. And I'm not trying to be respectful to somebody who's definitely broken barriers. But she's nothing but a lifetime politician who's been lining her. When you go look at, there's a guy who wrote an app, by the way, to follow politicians' investments in stock. And he made a fortune off of following what Nancy invested in.
Yep. These are the people that are running our country. They are.
So exciting. It's like an idiot fest.
I've never... I'll talk about my age. I'm not young, okay, so to speak. I guess relative to, I don't know what, a shark that lives a couple centuries, I suppose I'm young, but I've never seen it this bad where people, I've gotten in trouble for saying this before, but I'm going to say it again. You know how people always say, well, we don't know what the government's up to. They got all this technology. They know what the aliens are doing, and they know what's going on in your garage, and they know what I don't think anybody in the United States government knows shit. I honestly don't think anybody knows
them like
shit.
They're organized, and they're really independent groups that have their own vested interests in certain things. Like we talk about the government as though they're fucking organized. It's pretty obvious that most of our government our military is, but they're their own entity.
Yeah. There's probably only a few people at NASA that really know how to get to the moon. There's probably only a few people in our security defenses that really know how to operate some of our high-tech instruments and some of our intelligence. It is such a small fraction of the people that are actually in government. And quite frankly, that's true about us. We talk about all the time about, look at our cell phones, look how smart we are. How many people really know how this thing works? How can you really describe how it works from start to finish? Probably not. We're not as smart as we think we are. And I'll tell you what, the government, I don't think they're as sinister as what people think they are. I just think they're stupid. I don't think anybody knows shit. And when you listen to these people talk about TikTok and the internet and all these other things, when you really listen to the finer points of what they're talking about, they don't know what they're talking about.
Oh my! Have you heard the Commerce Committee? Did you hear them when they questioned TikTok? It was embarrassing. They didn't know how the Wi-Fi works. These people are overseeing our internet, and they don't know how the freaking Wi-Fi works. It was so. That's why they closed the doors for this last hearing, because they didn't want anyone to hear how stupid they sound.
Yes. So, all right. Well, I guess I've gotten myself in a lot of trouble tonight.
It's okay. I was really sassy and spicy tonight, but you touched on some topics that really set me on fire.
Yes. Well, I got to tell you, I'm hoping for the best with the election here. I really want RFK to be the dream that everybody thinks he is. I want that to be true.
Yeah, no, I think he's the most viable candidate in terms of just in every capacity.
Yeah.
So let's hope he picks a good vice presidential candidate.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about Don Lemon tonight. That's not a big deal anyhow. The story's already fading. Long story short, he got let go from CNN and wanted to do a thing on X. He got an interview with Elon Musk, which I would love to do, and he got a little sassy with him. And Elon said, I'm not doing any kind of a partnership. So then he went back to CNN and cried about it. So that's the skivvy on that situation. I'm all for everybody being able to, post here, and he can certainly still do that. But any type of, from what I understand, if all this is correct, any type of official partnership with any type of a production here it's pretty much gotten washed away.
Can CNN afford to let anybody else go? Is there anybody left at CNN? I'm starting to wonder.
If I was, and I've said this before, if I was part of the cable news industry right now, I would be very worried, because you not only have X, and for me, the long form content, and for you probably too, the long form content has worked very well. And by the way, Shaman has a podcast called Citizen Journalist, and she gets lots of listens. I mean, she's not a small time podcast, and people like us are doing very well here. Tucker Carlson, of course, he's in a whole nother category than I can only dream about, but long form content, journalists, industry people, celebrities, what have you, they're creating stuff here as a primary thing. Before, Twitter was always something you had a link that, you sent them somewhere else. Yeah. Now the content is right here, and you have the discussion. I was part of I've been going into spaces, what are called X Spaces. They're audio forums with a host, and you can have a panel of people having a discussion. People come up and can give their opinion and things like that.
I think they're beta testing video, by the way, because I've been using it for a couple
years now. I believe the host can go video now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that's something that I think is wonderful. There's some great discussions on here about RFK. I've been in a number of them, and there's some other things going on. Wonderful, what I would call townhouse, or in the old days, you had these town hall meetings, and you can do that virtually now, and it's absolutely wonderful. So there's a lot happening, and we'll be talking about that more. Getting down to the final third of our program here, a couple minutes left. Shaman, where can people find you and all the other good stuff about you?
They can find me at shamanisis.com and on Twitter at shamanisis. My podcast, Citizen Journalist, runs everywhere. And Memory Mansion is still out there. So go check out my book, Memory Mansion. It was a bestseller. Happy about that. And Soul Tech, my new magazine, which just came out, which is doing well. I'm very excited about it.
You got a lot going on. Yeah. Shaman has a long history of marketing and things. And so, I'm glad, that she comes on here once a week and joins me and talks about stuff. Very glad about that. You can find the Billy Dees podcast, and my podcast is in its current form is going on 10 years online. And of course, I've been doing professional audio for a lot longer than that. I can go back when we used to use these ribbons that had magnetics on them, and they would record sounds. We actually used tape when I started. You can find the Billy Dees podcast just about anywhere podcasts are found. We are on all the major platforms. You can find the Billy Dees podcast, and I am at Billy Dees on X. Real easy to find. I have just started Rumble. I haven't done a whole lot with Rumble until recently. I put some of the older programs up there so people had them. And I've just been going live here in this last week. This is our second time live there, and it's a brand new account. So, I mean, it's like really sparse, but I'm really happy about, doing some stuff on Rumble as well. Shaman, thank you very much for listening to being here on the podcast.
Thank you, Billy. Good time. We were fiery tonight.
We were fiery, and I made a lie. I got here come the tweets now. Here comes.
Oh, I know. You're gonna get spanked, but I'm probably gonna get spanked too.
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes that's a good thing, right?
I know, right?
And as far as everybody out there, thank you so much. I gotta thank you from the bottom of my heart for the listens that we get on the Billy Dees podcast and here on X. I'm gonna have to total up the amount of listens that we have had since we've been doing these lives, and my guess is it's in the hundreds of thousands.
Oh, I would think so, Billy. I'd be
the one thing we did about the abortion thing, that was the biggest. We had 40, that 40,000. Mm-hmm. But that's not normal. But nonetheless, that's the power of this platform. So I'm very glad that we have this free speech platform called X. So thank you very much for listening to our podcast today. All the listeners out there, you are absolutely amazing. And we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X, formerly known as Twitter, for updates about the program.